I have a lovely friend who is a foreigner. I won't say the country that she comes from. Her family comes from a war-torn country. And I've known her for almost 2 decades. And I met her through work, and we just really clicked. And as our friendship grew over the years, and even though I left and moved on to other jobs, we retained our friendship. And um, I hadn't really met her family. I'd only really had a friendship with her. And she invited me over to her house one time to meet her family, to meet her husband and the two beautiful children that they had at the time. And they all come from the same nationality and culture and background. And these were just such beautiful, warm, loving people. And they are Muslims. And, I've had so much contact with the whole family now that I basically view them as my family. I see them as being my family members now. So when I first met my friend's husband, she sort of said to me, "Oh, my husband's pretty scientifically minded. He doesn't believe in anything spiritual. He only believes in what can be proven scientifically and, you know, tangible evidence in the material world." And I said, "Oh, yeah, no, that's a lot of people that are like that." I said, I didn't really think anything of that. A lot of people are like that, most of society. And so she was sort of giving me a bit of a preface to meeting her husband, like, she's just letting me know that's what he's like. So if her and I were having a conversation about something spiritual, she's letting me know that he's probably going to, you know, think it's a lot of baloney or something. So I met him. He's very polite, very welcoming. And my friend said to me, "Oh, my husband would like to ask you a few questions about some things that he's not sure about," which surprised me because I thought, she just spent so much time telling me that he believes in science. I thought, well, he's probably just wants to test me so that he can say it's a whole lot of baloney. He could say, "Oh, she said this and that," and it means nothing. And that didn't worry me at all. So he asked me a question about his career. He said he works in IT, and he wanted to know what was coming up with his career. And I said, I actually think you're going to have a job change. And he says, "I'm going to have a job change." And I said, "Yeah, I can see you having a job change. And there's going to be a fellow called Robert that's going to help you introduce you into the new job change as part of the transition and orientation into your new job." And he said, "Oh," he goes, "Yeah." He said, I've just moved into a new job." I said, "Oh, you've just moved into a new job, like you're now in a new job?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "No, that's not the job that I'm talking about. You're telling me that you've moved into a new job, but I'm saying that even though you're in this new job, you're going to be put into another new job," which realistically doesn't sound logical. Why would he be put into a new job when he's just been put into a new job? Even as I was saying it, I knew it wasn't logical, but this is what I could see. So he said, what, I'm in this new job now. You're telling me that I'm going to move into a different job? And I said, yes, that's right. And I said, and when you go into that new job, the person who's going to help you transition into that new job is a guy who's called Robert. So, as I was saying it, I was like, wow, that's a pretty big call. The guy's just moved into a new job, like that week. And I'm saying, well, you're going to move into a new job when he hasn't even been in the job for 2 weeks. What are the chances of that happening? But even though it didn't make sense to me, that's what I was seeing. And I suppose one of the things about seeing in the spirit is, it's what you see in the spirit is it's not always logic. It's not logical. And you have to know, you don't try to interpret it or make a story around it. You just say what you can see, what you see, and that's it. Don't embellish it or go, I think it means this or it means that. Whatever you see, just say it as it is. And that's what I saw. He's going to move into another job. So I knew that he must have thought that was just so outlandish. But he was very gracious and hospitable, and I took it on board. We had a great night. We had lovely, they cook beautiful food from their culture, and they're just so lovely and warm. And I always love going over there and So the following week, my friend gives me a call, and she says, I don't want to say their names because they're so unusual. People will, know who it is. So she said, oh, my husband has asked me to ring you. And I said, really? She goes, yeah. She said, you're not going to believe what's happened. And I said, well, what's happened? She said, well, remember how you said he was going to move into another job, even though he just moved into a new job? I said, yeah. She said, well, literally, he's being moved into a new job. And I said, well, what do you mean? So what had happened was her husband had started a new job the week before, and the company that he got the new job at got bought out by a larger company. And as it got amalgamated into this larger company, they basically, took quite a few jobs out of the first company and kept a lot of their own staff in the larger company. And the few people that they kept from the first company, the few that they took over, they got transitioned into this new company. So it was like an acquisition. And he was moved into a new job. Like literally a week after I told him he was going to move into a new job, he was moved into a new job. And the reason why she said her husband wanted her to ring me was because the guy who transitioned him into the new job was called Robert. And she said that her husband simply just could not get over it, like literally could not get over it. And so that was the beginning of a really big long journey with my friend's husband, because that really changed his view on spiritual things, the unseen world. And he got so affected by the different things that I used to come out with. He ended up becoming a complete spiritual guru in the end. Like he built his garage into a treatment room. He became a master Reiki person. He was studying to do hypnosis. He studied meditation. And this room at the side of the house from the garage that he got built into a treatment room, he started charging clients, and people would come and see him and he would treat them. Like he just went from one end of the spectrum straight to the other end, because he couldn't refute the things that he had seen or heard throughout the years. Because another time, when I first started going to their home for dinner, which became a regular thing, they only had the two children, and they were both in primary school, I think. But they were old enough to take care of themselves, sort of thing. They weren't small. They could sort of, um, and they had it. The first one was a boy, so he was the oldest one. Next one down was a girl, so they had their boy and girl, and they sort of had their little family, and that was what they were going to have. But there came a time when I was going over for dinner. It actually happened twice, and as I would always go in and hug my friend and shake the hands of her husband, and I was really close friends with her mum. Like, her mum just loves me to pieces, and I love her mother to pieces. Um, I hugged her and I said, you know what? I literally thought I saw you holding a baby when I walked in the door. And I said, you've got baby energy all around you. And I said, and she said, no, 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 no. We've got our boy, we've got our girl. No more babies, no more babies. We've had our babies. And I went, yeah, you just got baby energy all around you. And I said, I don't know, maybe someone in your family's going to have a baby. I said, but literally I see you holding a baby. And it was so strong. It was so strong that I just, made a pretty big deal about it. And she was joking and her husband was laughing, like. And the next time I saw them, it was the same thing again. She just heard, I said, look, I just can't stop seeing you holding a baby. You've got a baby in your arms. You've got baby energy all around you. And once again, we went through the whole scenario of jokes again, because they had the two children, the boy and the girl that they wanted, and they were growing up nicely, doing really well at school. And, both of the parents were working, and lo and behold, I get a phone call from my friend, and she said to me, you're not going to believe what's happened. I'm actually pregnant. And I said, well, there you go. There's that baby energy. And I saw you holding that baby. So the third baby they ended up having was a lovely little girl, but there's a very large age gap between the last girl and the third one, so they just never planned or foresaw having another baby. That just wasn't in the equation. And lo and behold, they have this beautiful daughter. So they've got a son who's now married to a lovely girl, and they've got a daughter who's just absolutely excelling at school and at university. And the young one, yeah, still going to school. So they've ended up having 3 children. So there's just so many things that happened throughout the years that her husband just couldn't really refute. Not that I was trying to prove anything, it didn't really worry me. I'm not out to convince anybody of anything. So that was that.